Kia ora, and welcome to Under the Checkered Flag. I'm Kate. I am joined by Kelly and PozzA as always. We are going to get into talking about the racing, but first, I want to discuss the news that came out yesterday, and that is the fact that the European Commission has approved Liberty Media's acquisition of Dorna Sports. So this includes obviously MotoGP, but it does also include World Superbike. I'm a little bit surprised by the fact that they weren't told they have to sell World Superbikes, but maybe that was a handshake deal sort of thing. I think this is going to be quite good for the sport. Obviously, I'm hoping for the copyright laws to back off so we can start using video clips on our YouTube channel, and I'm hoping video price comes down. What do you guys think about this? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? We've known it's coming for a while, so we've had a bit of time to digest the news. But what are your thoughts?
I don't really like Liberty Media, as people would say. I still think they're just quite bad as a management in general. But a positive is I think they're going to be really good for promotion of the sport. We know Dorna, as you said, is really bad with us using video clips and just general promotion. I feel like this acquisition will just be a lot better for the up and coming riders as well, because people, if you ask general people, they don't know who they actually are. And that's mostly due to Dorna's just not doing anything with them. So I'm hoping with Liberty Media they will actually do something and it will be a positive influence.
Yeah, I personally don't really believe much is gonna change initially, just because Dorna are still gonna be in control of pretty much everything. I feel like that's one of the things that Carmelo Espeleta wanted out of this deal. But yeah, I agree with Kelly. I think the biggest initial problem that needs to be tackled is better promotion, specifically Moto2 and Moto3. But they just barely get any coverage on social media outside of Twitter. I feel like especially on Instagram, a lot more effort could be put in, because these days it's pretty much there'll be a post for the pole sitter and the race winner, and then maybe a handful of clips that were sort of interesting that come out throughout the week after. And I just don't think it's really enough to get more people to watch Moto2 and Moto3, because obviously people watch it less. I feel like generally both races are more exciting than the MotoGP race tends to be anyway. Yeah, I feel like that's the first problem that they should come in and try and tackle, just promoting the not feeder series, but the junior categories a bit more.
Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree, especially with what we're seeing lately, because it's racing that got me, and I'm sure both of you, into motorcycle racing, like the actual overtakes and that thrillingness. Thrillingness, I'm pretty sure that's a new word, but okay. But that thrilling action. And we definitely see that in Moto 2 and Moto 3. And we definitely saw some of that this weekend. So let's look at Mugello, because it's always an absolute stunning weekend because of the kind of track it is. It's one of the ones where we can get lots of overtakes. And in Moto 3, I don't really know where to start because it was a beautiful battle. Before some incidents later in the race, we had a lead group of, I believe it was 21 at one point, 21 riders that were chopping and changing. Unfortunately, some big hitters did get taken out, like David Almanza, who was having a really strong weekend. Perez was also injured in a crash. It was a pretty scary looking crash. Fortunately, we've been told all riders are okay. There are a few broken bones, which is standard with motorcycle racing, I suppose. That crash involved himself, Rossi, and Moodley, and also Linetta and Fernandez crashed out together. So it was, one of those weekends. I think the crash that broke my heart the most was Guido Pini's, because it was his home race. He'd had a really poor qualifying, and he crashed out after some contact with Kelso, which I do lean towards the fact that Kelso should have been penalised. Yeah, after that poor qualifying, he'd had a really good comeback, so it was quite disappointing for me. What did you guys think of this race?
Highly devastating in some ways and really entertaining in others. Like you said, the lead lap of about 21 riders was very stressful and I was scared. Mugello's always very good with feeder series, with Moto2 and Moto3, but my God, I was like, don't like this. Yeah, the one person I really wanted to do well this weekend was Ogden, with qualifying top three. I was like, maybe he can make something out of it, and it just didn't really go his way. Um, he did have contact with Almanza, which I stand by. It was not his fault. Please, it was a racing incident. You could see it. He couldn't go anywhere. Please go away. Go away. But yeah, I would have hoped for better than P12, but at the end of the day, that's just the way the race went, and I probably shouldn't have expected anything better. I think, as Kate said, I'd have to agree that Guido Pini's crash was definitely not a highlight of the weekend for me, and I stand by the fact that it was a little bit of poor form by Joel Kelso. The difference between him and Ogden's incident is the fact that you could see Kelso could actually move, and it was just honestly pure aggression, and he shouldn't have done it. And he definitely should have been penalised, and just heartbreaking for Pini in his home race. But yeah, overall, really entertaining race, and I loved it.
Yeah, obviously Moto3 at Mugello is always going to be a pretty spectacular close race. Seeing as there's only ever been one in Moto3 history that's been decided by less than, or more than a tenth of a second, I should say. This one was covered by 6,000th across the line between the top two, and just over half a tenth between the podium, which is always good to see. Just gonna do my quick rookie roundup, and I'm gonna give out one extra shout out, but I'll get to that. It was a rookie one too, with Max Quiles winning his first race and Alvaro Carpe taking second. Special shout out goes to Dennis Foggia. I feel like no one was really expecting him. Obviously, being Italian, I feel like he could have been in the top 10, but I don't think anyone was really expecting him to be in the victory fight. And I believe I saw a stat saying it's his first podium in somewhere around 1,000 days, which could be wrong, but still good result for him. Valentin Peroni was P8, was fighting in the lead group and started at the back of the grid, so it was a good result for him. And Cormac Buchanan was the last rookie in the points in 15th.
Much like Moto 3, we got some really good battles in Moto 2. But before we cover that, I want to cover the news of Sergio Garcia. Because coming into this weekend, we found out that he had parted ways with his team, who, thinking about it, they change their names so often, we're just going to call them MT Helmets, because I don't actually know off the top of my head their full name right now. He's been replaced by Eric Fernandez, who debuted this weekend. I can understand why this has happened. I do think it's a little bit harsh, and I do wish that he had been given to the end of the year. And yeah, it's just a disappointing situation, really, but I do understand it from MT Helmet's point of view. Do you guys think he's going to get a ride next year? And do you think MT Helmets were a bit too harsh?
I would have to disagree with you because I do not think that it was fair that they fired them at all. I'm really not happy about it actually, and that's not coming from me being a big fan of him, even though I am. I know he's been having a bad run of things, but at the same time, everyone has a bad run of things. It's not like his teammate was really anywhere as well. It's not like they were performing. I'm not like it's not like his teammate was doing anything big and massive either, and that's what annoys me a bit more. Yeah, I feel like it's highly unfair. This man is I feel like we forget this man was is severely injured and has come back from injury and is trying to. He's literally trying to come back from an injury and severe, honestly, like a really bad mental state as well. And yeah, to be kicked out by his team like that, and they're like, he left amicably. I'm like, no, he didn't. Let's be honest. Everyone puts that when the rider leaves, they always say he left with agreement and amicably. They never do, never ever. So that basically means that they kicked him out and they said we don't want you, which I'm really not happy about. Eric Fernandez, I do like, and I'd like to see him do well, so that's okay. But yeah, aside from that, I'm not happy that they got rid of Perez. No, not Perez, Garcia whatsoever.
Yeah, I feel like just in most general cases when a rider gets fired prematurely for performance reasons, it always feels a bit harsh. Unfortunately, I feel like I could kind of see this coming. He hasn't really been performing for almost a year now, and it's a team that have come off the back of winning a title. So I'm not overly surprised that they dropped him. Would have been nicer for it to have been a bit further into the season because obviously he started this year with an injury which was holding him back. Hopefully he can find somewhere else to ride on. Maybe this year, probably not. It'd probably be next year because as he showed at the start of 2024, he's got the talent to fight at the front of Moto2. It just kind of seems like he needs the bike and the confidence in himself to do so. So yeah, hopefully he can find that somewhere else for next year.
Looking at this race weekend in Moto2, it was pretty darn good again. And I think this is mainly thanks to Diogo Moreira, who is treating us all to some sensational shows. The podium this week was Aaron Canet in third, Albert Arenas in second, and Manu Gonzalez in first. And the main thing I guess I want to talk about is Aaron Canet's comments in his interview after the race. He was, how shall I say this, very firm in his position that Diogo Moreira shouldn't have rubbed him as much while racing. For me, they were gunning for the podium, so this was the battle for P3. I'm a big fan of rubbing his racing, but Canet seemed to be under the impression that once or twice it's all good, but not every corner. Personally, I thought it was brilliant and gave us an excellent show, and I absolutely adore Diogo for his riding style. The same reason I like Marc Marquez and Brad Binder and Jack Miller. These guys give us overtakes and push themselves and their bikes to the limits. That's my thoughts on Moto2 for this weekend. How about you two?
It's not aggressive riding that I like, but I like I like when riders put up a bit of a fight, and that's exactly what Moreira did. I feel like Canet really shouldn't be very annoyed about that. I feel like racing is racing. As long as they're not trying to, commit murders against each other, then why not? Have fun with it. Go for it. Um, yeah, it was just, yeah, it feels like he's trying to compensate for something there, but I don't know. What would I know? The race in general was actually very good. But like even with no DNFs, I actually enjoyed it more than most of the weekend. So, yeah, honestly, I was quite sad about Zonta van der Gorberg again. It's not like we saw him much during the race, but then you see him go in for a mechanical and you're like, well, that's fun. It's just really like an every weekend thing at this point, and I have to get over it at some point. I just have to acknowledge the fact that he's not going anywhere. But live, laugh, and love, I guess. Yeah, Manu Gonzalez is the winner. Yay, he's back on top. There's no DNFs, no struggles. I'm happy with that. I will take it. Um, Happy with Arenas for the podium as well. I don't know how that happened. I don't know where it came out of, but like, yay, he's on it. Um, Overall, the top 10 was actually quite enjoyable with David Alonso in the top 10. And a shout out to my guy. Okay, I know he didn't finish anywhere special, but just back from injury, and he was up fighting for some positions. You could see him go up and down the leaderboard with overtakes. And honestly, coming back from a pretty bad injury like that, I'm quite proud of him. So regardless of where he finished, he had a decent weekend. You go, Vire, you go, girl. Yeah, just overall, pretty good weekend.
Yeah, it was another good race in Moto2. Something I feel like we're sort of getting accustomed to seeing this year. Obviously, Gonzalez ended up winning fairly comfortably in the end. He just saved his tires better than the rest of them. That was pretty much it. I was close at the start because everyone was tire saving because they weren't sure if the tires would last in the heat. But everyone pretty much saved them up well enough. No one really dropped too far out of contention towards the end. As Kelly said, Albert Arenas in second was quite unexpected going into the weekend, but it's good to see for him personally. And obviously, Aaron Canet beat out Diogo Moreira in that heated fight between the two. I didn't really see anything wrong from either of them in the moves they were making. I'd understand it if the moves did end up letting Vietti to properly challenge them, but I don't really think it did in the end. And it was late enough in the race that they weren't going to catch Arenas even if they weren't fighting. So I can understand Canet's frustration, but it's racing at the end of the day, and that's what they did. They went racing. So I'm not too disappointed in either of them for what happened. And as always, give a quick roundup of the rookies that did well. As Kelly mentioned, David Alonso was up in 8th as top rookie, and the only other rookie in the points was Danny Holgado in 15th.
Looking at MotoGP then, we're going to start with something that I think we all enjoy on this podcast, and that is the liveries. So we had 4 special liveries at Mugello, purely because I think this is a home race for a lot of teams and riders. We do see, helmets and things like that as well. Maybe we'll do a special pod at the end of the year in regards to helmets. But looking at the liveries, we had Pramac Yamaha, VR46, and Ducati, and Aprilia actually. So they were the ones all sporting liveries. I think my favourite has to be Pramac Yamaha, actually. What did you guys think of these special liveries? Do you have a favourite? And if so, which is it?
Okay, right. Don't judge me. VR46. I mean, what? I know it's like a splash of every color in the sun, but it's better than that fake ass yellow. My God, it is so ugly. I don't care what anyone says. Delivery for VR46 last year and this year is ugly as sin, and I hate it. So I'm really happy with this, like a little splash of color for VR46. I love it. It's not as it wasn't as violently bright as I expected it to be over the weekend, but yeah, I loved it, to be honest, and I'd love to see it come back or something like that.
I'd have to agree with Kelly on the VR46 thing, and honestly, it probably comes down to just the simple fact that the second you put pink on a bike, I'm pretty much just destined to like it. But even the blue and the purple, they looked pretty good. Aside from that, uh, I liked the Pramac. I don't feel like I really saw a lot of it on during the race, but it looks like it was good. Uh, Honestly, as the race went on, the Ducati kind of grew on me. I feel like I went into the race thinking that I don't really like dark red as a color, which is true. But from some angles, it almost looked black, and I thought that looked quite cool. Yeah, I thought that one was pretty good as well. And the Aprilia didn't change much. They just changed the colors of the Aprilia logo and the rider numbers. But I still think it looks pretty good. The matte black Aprilia just in general looks good. So yeah, that one was pretty nice as well. I think all of them were pretty decent.
The one thing I didn't like about the Ducati livery was the fact the numbers were so hard to see and differentiate between. Fortunately, we know Mark's going to be at the front, and generally this year Pecco's going to be behind him, so you knew who you were watching, which feels like a really harsh statement to have made. On to our next topic, and that is Jack Miller. Because Jack Miller has been rumoured to have been offered a 3-year factory ride by Honda over in World Superbikes. Reportedly, it's a $1.5 million a year contract. I love Jack Miller, and I think he's in quite a good position currently to negotiate himself for another year in MotoGP and then move towards Superbikes. But personally, I'm all about job security. I'd probably think that Miller should take the ride. Would you take the 3-year factory ride in World Superbikes, or would you try and negotiate 1 year in MotoGP?
I would have gone for Superbike. I kind of expected a move for Miller to Superbikes last year, even. I feel like, oh, I don't know how to say it. I feel like his time is spent. Um, he's definitely put up some random good performances that were like, oh, he might be back, and then he's just not. It's really on and off, and I feel like you just can't do that at this stage of MotoGP. And I'd love to see another Moto2 rider, an up and coming one, get a seat. So I feel like Jack's taking up a seat that could be taken by someone else, unfortunately. And I feel like he could be good at superbikes. I feel like it might be a nice kind of movement for him. It's going to be calmer. Yeah, I feel like I'm alone in the fact that I think he's done.
Backing up Kelly's closing statement of that, I believe the commentators were saying that Jack's pushing to get the MotoGP deal because that's where he wants to be. And as the very non-biased Australian that I am, I kind of hope that he can get that deal over the line. It's good to see Australians in the sport, and in my ideal world, I'd like to see him there until at least someone like Senna Aegis can come up and snag a GP ride. So, yeah, that's my very unbiased view.
The other, I guess, rider market news that I want to cover, and I know we have some very differing opinions on this podcast, is the fact that Toprak Razgatlioglu is confirmed to be moving to Pramac Yamaha for 2026. I see it as a good and bad thing myself because I'm excited to have Toprak in the paddock. I'm excited to have stoppies, and I do want to see him alongside Jack Miller next year because I can just see, them trying to outstop each other, and the photos and videos will be sensational. I do think it's a bit of a disappointment for World Superbikes in a way, and I don't follow World Superbikes as religiously as I follow MotoGP. Toprak in MotoGP, what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like I'm alone, at least with Poz, I'm alone about my opinion on this. I don't want him. Sorry, I'd have to be honest and straight about it. I don't want him there. I've said it on my TikTok, I've said it on the podcast TikTok, I've said it on the podcast before probably. I think that the chassis between Superbike and MotoGP is just far more different than people actually think it is. It's not just jumping from one motorbike to another and be like, oh, this is grand, I'm great. It's not. It's completely different. You're moving to a completely different manufacturer. You're moving to a completely different style of bike. You're moving to a manufacturer that is slower than about half the field. And please, guys, for the love of God, take into account that Toprak is not going to be coming into this sport and winning every race within about, like, what, 2 weeks? It's not going to happen. It's going to take him more than a year probably to start winning races with that factory. I mean, not that manufacturer. He's not going to do it. Okay, he's not as good as you guys think he is. He's a good rider, absolutely, but he lost his form because his manufacturer in World Superbike is no longer as good. And I feel like people are just glazing him so much that they don't see that. Like, I love Toprak, I really do. I think he is actually quite a good rider, but he has lost his form a bit, and I feel like that form will be lost more in MotoGP. I don't see what he can really bring massively to this, but um, that's just me.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite side, as Kelly alluded to in that the brief dialogue. I don't know if that's the right word, but we'll move. Um, I've been a pretty big fan of Toprak, and in turn, pretty much all the Turkish riders for a number of years now. So I think it will be exciting to see what he can do, especially if if he sticks around long enough for the Pirellis to come in. Obviously, the tires make a pretty big difference, which not a lot of people, I feel like, allude to. So I think it'll be interesting to see him when they get onto the Pirellis that he's used to. I don't really see him like getting into a title fight, especially not on a Yamaha, but I still feel like he can put in some good results. And obviously, the crowds that he draws to World Superbikes, you basically can't go a podium that he's on without seeing like 5 Turkish flags in the crowd. So I feel like he'll also bring some of those fans over to MotoGP, which is always a good thing, getting more fans in. And I'm honestly hoping that it brings a, brings back the Turkish Grand Prix as well, because I think Istanbul is quite a good track. And I believe there's already been a deal signed between the track and Dorna, which happened a while ago. They just haven't put any races into place. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see develop in the future as well.
Looking at MotoGP, we're going to start with the sprint. Obviously, this is quite overshadowed by the racing on Sunday, which isn't something we often say, I suppose. Mark stuffed up the start quite dramatically. It looked like he had some trouble with his launch device, and that dropped him back, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 places right at the start. We saw some interesting first lap shenanigans between Fabio Di Giannantonio, Brad Binder, and Johann Zarco. We did see, as a result of that, Binder and Zarco crash out. I swear Zarco has 0 luck in sprints. It's just, unfortunate. The podium, I haven't actually written down, which tells me that it was probably Pecco Bagnaia in P3, Alex Marquez in P2, and Marc Marquez in P1. Our default setting for this year. I'm sure that Poz or Kelly will correct me if I'm wrong there, but overall, it was an alright sprint. There was enough to talk about. It's probably not one I'm going to write home about, but yeah, did I get that podium wrong?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's not really a sprint that I'd sing praises about. But it was still quite entertaining, especially with Mark jumping up the stairs. And I actually thought that maybe there could be a bit of a scrap for a win, but no, it ended up being him anyway. It always ends up being him, but yeah, it was fun to see him screw up the start for a second at least. That was fun. Um, Honestly, shout out to my man Marco Bezzecchi. You are so back. He's not winning every weekend. He's not getting podiums every weekend, but he's getting damn close, which is what I wanted, and I will absolutely take it. That's honestly the best thing that could happen to me. Pretty sad for Batmav. He just did not have the weekend that he deserved whatsoever. It was just not his weekend. Um, and for Johann Zarco, after coming off like a couple of really really good strong weekends, he's just getting crushed out, and it's just not fun to watch. It's really really sad. And Enea Bastianini, my guy, what's going on? Come back, please. I can't even talk about you on the podcast because you're doing nothing. You're not doing anything every weekend, and I'm trying, but I can't. Just come back, please. Um, yeah, top three with Fabio Di Giannantonio, just really entertaining, and yeah, I loved it. To be honest, just not my favorite ever.
Can't lie, outside of Marquez's botch start, I don't, and the turn one crash between Binder and Zarco, I really don't remember much else happening in this sprint. Obviously, same top three as we've generally gotten. And the only other things I can really say are shout out to Maverick Vinales in fourth. It was a good weekend for him in general up until a certain incident in the race, which we will get to. Aside from that, Clement Aldegar got a point in ninth, and Raul Fernandez actually had a pretty solid weekend all round, getting eighth in the sprint as well.
So, looking at the race, we had a wonderful opening battle between Pecco and Mark. And it was sort of what I expected this season to be over the course of 5 laps. Fortunately, even though that was only a battle at the start of the race, we got some great late race action between Acosta and Binder as well. And it has given me a bit more hope for the season after a couple of lackluster rounds. Our podium was Fabio Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez, and Marc Marquez. And as Poz mentioned, Raul Fernandez really did put in a strong result this weekend. Overall, I'm happy with this race and enjoyed it, and I think it's probably one I'd consider watching back in the future. What about the two of you and your thoughts on this race?
Okay, so aside from the fact that it actually was a very good race, I did make a bit of an incident myself. I was looking at race results for the sprint. Very sorry. So I'll fix that right now. DNFs were Pedro Acosta, sad. Johann Zarco, like I already mentioned, very sad. And Brad Binder, really sad. I wanted them to do better in the sprint. Really depressing. Podium was practically the same, except it was Pecco Bagnaia in P3. I made that mistake. I'm very sorry. Now on to the race. Um, yeah, I mentioned 2G and after already. Batmav after being taken out by someone. I wonder who that someone was. But yeah, after being taken out by that was just it was really sad 'cause he was on for a really good result, and I was yeah really not happy, so depressed. And Bastianini, like I said, I want him to do better. I don't know where that man is, but he needs to come back. Um, yeah, Joe Zarco as well, just sad, really, really sad. Alongside that, Pedro Acosta, after his sprint race, did come back to finish in the top 10 in 8th place, which I will take at this point. It's better than nothing. Marco Bezzecchi top 5. Let's go. He's so back. He's so back, and I'm so happy about it. And top 3 stayed basically the same, except Fabio De Gian Antonio swapped out Pecco Bagnaia for the last podium spot. Overall, just quite entertaining, and for the first time in a while, I'd say it was one of my favorite sessions of the weekend.
Yeah, obviously the start to the race was very interesting with the battle between Bagnaia and both Marquez brothers. I feel like I've said this before the season, but it's always good when you see Bagnaia get his elbows out racing Mark. I feel like not many other riders really do that against him. So yeah, it's always good to see someone sort of give it back to Mark the way that he gives it to the rest of them. Yeah, traded places quite a few times, and then after a while, Alex Marquez came into it, led for a bit, but in the end, it was the Marquez ones who we've been used to seeing. It was good to see Gian Antonio get a podium. I believe that means all the Ducatis have now got a podium this year. So that's good to see for Digia as well, especially putting that spectacular livery on the podium. To Shane Bagnaia couldn't do it in his home race. You could say the same thing with Bezzecchi as well. Obviously, Morbidelli was in 6th. That incident that we'll cover soon may have hindered him a bit. Then, yeah, Raul Fernandez in 7th. Was top rookie in 10th, with Fermin Aldeguer in 12th. And Jean-Pierre Chantro was the other rookie who didn't really do much. I think he had mechanical issues at some point, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it was a pretty good race. The first, say, like half maybe, with the battles at the front. So hopefully we see a few more of them in future races.
And I appreciate you both from withholding from Morbidelli comments, because I said before we jumped into the topic that Morbidelli was going to get his own subject line. And he is, because yet again, we have another incident caused by Franco Morbidelli. And honestly, I'm keen to put him on par with David Munoz at the moment. Munoz has an excuse. He's young and inexperienced. I don't think Franco Morbidelli has an excuse. And I'm saying this as a massive Franco Morbidelli fan. So what happens is, in the race, Morbidelli tried to go up the inside of Maverick Vinales, who, as Kelly said, was having a wonderful weekend. There was no gap, and he took Vinales out. I can't fault the stewards for their call here. It was his first offence of the season in a race. I do feel like, given the circumstances, he probably should have got a more harsh penalty than a long lap. Maybe that's what he thought too, because he absolutely botched his long lap and had to perform another one. I don't really know how to resolve the situation. And yeah, it's a little bit frustrating to say the least. Do you guys agree with me?
Oh, I'm so ready right now. I am so ready. I've been wanting to talk about this since it happened on Sunday, and I do stand by the fact that I think Franco Morbidelli is an absolute tool. Why is he still there? Why is he still there? Every weekend, well, not every weekend, actually, maybe I'll give him a bit of leniency. Every second weekend, this man has some sort of incident, whether it's riding slow, whether it's crashing into someone, whether it's causing an incident. Just because this man is occasionally fast does not give him the right to be performing these kind of things. The only reason, and I think someone needs to say this straight to his face, the only reason this man is actually still in the seat is because of the fact that he is fast. It's nothing to do with his racecraft, because his racecraft isn't actually there. Honestly, Kate, to be fair, I understand where you're coming from, but to compare him to David Munoz is actually an insult to Munoz. As you said, Munoz is young and he's definitely still learning. That doesn't mean I don't think he's a bit of a tool sometimes on track. Absolutely he is, but there is absolutely no comparison between a grown adult who knows exactly what he's doing to a child in Moto3. It's really inexcusable, and I think that yeah, just a long lap penalty was far too lenient. You could clearly see that was not intentional, but the way he was riding was absolutely intentional. It was either you let me pass or you're going out. That is exactly the way he rode, and that is exactly what happened. I'm glad that he botched it. To be honest, I think he deserved way worse than that. And I hope at some point that these teams actually realise, my God, he is useless, and they get rid of him, because I don't like looking at him every weekend. It just makes me really sad. So that's my opinion on it. I tried to keep it as short as possible. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it was one of those moves that is borderline impossible to defend. He wasn't ahead at any point before clattering into the side of Vinales. Obviously, Vinales had no incentive to pick the bike up like you see in some moves. Yeah, you're just never really going to make a move coming in that far back into turn two. I could see like the idea that he was going for with some of the moves we've seen into turn two, but he just wasn't close enough in the end, and obviously shot himself in the foot a bit, messing up his first long lap, and ended up having to take two anyway. So obviously he felt a bit remorseful. But yeah, I feel like the answer for these things is always just penalize them harsher, try and weed the behavior out, and if that doesn't work, then you just kind of keep penalizing them harsher until it does. I feel like that's sort of the way that they end up having to go. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that, if the incidents do keep stacking up. I think this is the first one this year that he's had where he's made contact with someone else, hence it being a first offence and only the one long lap. So if he keeps it clean, then he shouldn't keep getting more penalties for it. That's how the system's supposed to work. So hopefully he keeps it that way, and yeah, we don't keep seeing this in races to come.
That is pretty much the racing for the weekend, so it brings us to our final segment, and that is Rider of the Weekend. I'm going to kick us off this week, and I'm going with David Almanza. He was having a really, really strong weekend, and obviously it ended up in disappointing results, but I think there's just something there, and I'm really hoping that something's clicked more. But I found myself looking for him in the timing stands when I definitely don't normally do that. So a really good weekend for him, and hopefully we can see more of Almanza. What was Sorry, I'm going to crop that. Who was your rider of the weekend?
I feel like I might have gone for a really obvious one, but I went for Max Keeles. Um, just strongest weekend out of most of the riders out of any class, I feel like. To be in your fifth race overall and to win it, first of all, and to have your first podium, your first pole, and your first win in the same places that Marc Marquez had it is a pretty big achievement and says a lot for his future in the sport. So, yeah, I felt like he had a really strong weekend compared to almost everyone, and I think there's a talent in him that nobody has seen yet, but will definitely show more prominently in the future.
Yeah, for mine, I've decided a bit different. Go for Foggia because again, we weren't him. They're fighting, and a stat that I've just dropped in the chat that I mentioned earlier. It's been 994 days between his last podium in 2022 and this one, so it's always good to see those big long streaks get ended, I guess. And yeah, it was good to see him back fighting. Obviously, emotion that he expelled after the race. He is on the cooldown lap coming back. Yeah, I'm gonna give that one to him. Might be biased just because I don't really mind Foggia as a rider, and yeah, this one just felt kind of special for him.